I flourished in the church more with people and men that were around me that I knew were meek. And by what I mean by that is like they weren't with men that weren't afraid to say, I'm a sinner. I struggle with these things.
Yeah.
Versus men that walked around pretending like they walked on water and like our pastor says had communion for
Right.
breakfast this morning. And they never sin. If you went up to them and say, man, I struggle with lust, like, oh, how dare you? Like he never did that, right?
Right.
So to me, that wouldn't be meekness because he's acting like he never even had the power to do the negative, right?
Yeah, right.
But a man that sits there and says, I have the power and I have the desire and the ability to do the negative things and not restrain from that, that's a true leader, a true masculine, biblical man.
Welcome to Violent Men, Ambassadors of Peace podcast. I'm your host, Kit, joined by my other host,
SP.
and
Papa Bear.
And today, we're going to bring you a couple of different topics I think we find important, and really just kind of share our thoughts, because a lot of times whenever you see us doing a podcast, it's a very well planned out, tailored topic review, and we get to outline a bunch of points, but we kind of found 6 different points I feel like we should talk about, and then maybe at some point we'll probably go into a full-blown podcast. So the first topic that we're going to talk about is strength under control. Is meekness manly? So in case y'all are wondering, if you don't know what the definition of meekness is, go ahead and look it up just to make sure. Fact check me, whatever, ask ChatGPT. Meekness is strength under control. So whenever you as a man think of your strength, often most of us may equate it to like your physical strength, the way you look, how you carry yourself in person and, you know, in front of other people, to portray yourself as this machismo, this really manly man. But we know through this podcast, we talk about the internal characteristics of biblical masculinity. So an aspect of biblical masculinity that we haven't really touched on a whole bunch is meekness. And all 3 of us in this room, actually all 4 of us, including our producer, at some point in our lives have had to exercise the strength that we have and put it under control, because we are all under submission to Jesus Christ. So, so what does strength look like in a man? That's what we're going to be talking about first. So without further ado, anybody? Takers. What does strength under control look like to you guys? I got some.
Go ahead.
Okay, so for instance, me personally, in my own life, in my own personal life, having 3 progeny that look like me, think like me, don't do what I say, do the things that I used to do when I was a little boy, I'm learning that I have the power to not feed my children if I choose to. A lot of parents, if their kids don't listen, they spank them for every offense. They may punish them unnecessarily. Some of them may end up going to jail. So what does meekness look like for me as a parent? I know I could tell you from my experience, my kids test me almost all the time. They lie to my face. They fight each other, even though I tell them not to fight each other. They're supposed to love each other. I try to get them to portray the aspects of biblical masculinity that they're not even familiar with because they're not grown yet. So with my kids, whenever I'm talking to my children, I have to exercise the strength that I have and let them know that I love you, I have to discipline you in this way, and it's going to be okay after you get disciplined. So
That's good. Yeah, I love how the way you put it earlier, how it's not external, it's internal mainly, right? Meekness is
I like
power
that.
under control. A lot of times the most common definition or outlook that you have on being strength being a characteristic of manhood is violence.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's actually one of the reasons why we chose violent men, because we wanted to not focus on the anger part or the physicality of doing harm, but the passion behind it.
Yeah.
You know, I often tell guys that get on our security team, it's not what you're capable of doing, it's what are you willing to do.
Yeah.
So one of the things that one of the responsibilities that God has given men is to be protectors. But it has nothing to do with violence. It's more with leadership.
Yeah.
And it's not physical, but a lot of it's spiritual, right? And even if you don't see yourself as having strength on that side, it's not what you're capable of doing. It's what are you willing to do? What are you willing to do for your neighbor? What are you willing to do for your brother, for your, family, for your wife, for your children? What are you willing to do?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then once you know what you're willing to do, and you know what you're not capable of, how far you're willing to go, now you keep it under control and you put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
And you only break that glass if you have to.
Yeah.
But for me, the foundation, everything starts with God and Jesus, right?
Yeah.
One of the ways that I know I can carry myself confident as a man is knowing what God has called me to do. When you walk in God's calling, then nothing else matters. Then, like a lot of people, fear no man, but they look at it from a machismo type of thing. I fear no man. I don't fear no man but God,
Right.
I'm a big tough dude.
Yeah.
I fear no man, not because of that, because I know who I am through him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And honestly, that's more on spiritual than physical. It does translate physical because you know what you're capable of doing, but it's a confidence and an assuredness of who you are and how you carry yourself, because I know who my Father is. I know who my Savior is. I know the calling he has on my life. And like right before we started this, we don't know what to say, how we're going to say it, but we trust you, God.
Yeah.
And when you walk around with that confidence and that assurance of your soul, then everything else comes easy, in my opinion.
Yeah. As this topic relates to the fruits that we talked about in the last episode with Fruit Ninjas, right? We talked about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, okay? Whenever we're talking about strength under control, being in submission to God, and me translating that to my leadership abilities within my family, specifically for my kids that test me all the time,
Right.
I'm able to build the patience, the forbearance. I'm able to build those fruits as it relates to my children, because I have the strength to do way more than I should. But at what point is it moral? Am I violating the person that I'm supposed to be for my kids? Am I using my strength in the right kind of way? Right? So,
well, you know how they say it's better to be, a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war.
yeah, and really the kind of the opposite of meekness is weakness.
Yeah.
Because
I read, so you're physically fit. You have the ability to just abuse your kids, to be an abusive parent, but you choose to be the opposite. And the reason that's a good virtue to have is because you have the ability to do the negative. If you didn't have the ability to do the negative, then you doing good wouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't be, one of the reasons I think that the angels envy us is because we have the ability to choose to love God. They were created for no other reason than to worship God. They have no other option. Even if they tried, they couldn't do it. We have the ability. So you have the ability to harm those kids, but you're a good father because you don't. You're a good moral man because you treat them right. You raise them right. You want their best. You have their best interests at heart. You're good.
Yeah.
That's like morality. Like Jordan Peterson says morality wouldn't be a good virtue if you didn't have the ability to sin.
Yeah.
But since you have the ability to sin and you keep from sinning, and then morality becomes a good virtue. And I think this whole meekness, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
We have the ability to do harm. We have the ability to be selfish. We have the ability, but we don't do that, and we choose to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Now,
yeah.
go ahead, bro.
Well, in control.
Self-control.
Self-control.
Yeah.
That's like the true strength of, that's what meekness is.
Yeah. Strength under control. Yep.
I like it because for me personally, I've always been the type that never like boast or anything like that, or like try to like show off, like show that I'm better than someone, or I have more leadership skills than this other person. I felt that I've always been very self-controlled and controlled my anger. I've never been like a really angry kid, or like I've always been a big kid, a big guy now as well. And I can probably, overpower somebody quite easily, right? Yeah. But I never use that to my advantage to try to get over on someone or try to show my toughness or anything like that. Like I never want no, like I listened to this 50 Cent, so that was back in my worldly days. But I love what he said because I agree with it so much. He's like I never want problem, but someone comes up and says he wants a problem, be like, okay, what's the problem? You know what I mean? Like I'm here. Like if you want to start something, I'll go that route. But I'm in control. It's like I don't need to do that. Right. You know what I mean? So I control emotions, and I think, and just like being in the Word and learning about Jesus, like he was so in control. I mean, he was perfect, right? And he knew his calling. He knew his purpose because God, put it in his heart. And like, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna die on the cross. And what I love about him is like, he invited Judas in, and he knew he was gonna betray him, and he just. He came up to him like he's so calm. Yeah. He listened to him, and he's like, I'll disciple you as long as you promise you'll follow me. You know what I mean? You'll love God with all your heart. And then he invited him in. But how much control this person is gonna betray you. Right. You know who your calling is, but you're still so loving. You're gentle. Yeah. You understand your, like how you say, you understand your purpose, and that can be your strength. Like you're so in tune to what God has purposed you in your life that you're not willing to waver or lose control and damage that. You have that discernment.
Can you imagine the level on a human? Because he was all God and all man. How is it, man? Can you imagine the internal conflict he must have been going through, knowing that this guy would betray him?
Yeah. And amongst other things,
having to deal with that.
But amongst other things.
We just mentioned self-control, and his self-control was at another level because this was God incarnated.
Yeah.
He could do anything at a snap of a finger, right?
Yeah.
But he has self-control to just sit there calm. And not only that, if he was 100% human, he had all the emotions that we have.
Yeah.
Anger, lust, maybe a little bit of envy. Who knows, right? So he had all those emotions at the same time, but he kept it under control. And that's one of the things that when I've had the privilege and the responsibility to coach and talk guys when they're going through certain things. And right now there's a guy that's going through a very young guy in his late 20s, going through a real ugly divorce. He's not a believer, but because of my professional career or whatnot, he's around me, and he just gravitated towards me, and I've been kind of speaking life into him and speaking to him. And one of the things that I tell him is like, don't lose control of your emotions, because when you get emotional, then everything goes out the window. Nothing makes sense after that. You make rash decisions. You don't make any sense. If you control your emotions, that's the number one, and that's one of the things how you can be meek is by controlling your emotions.
Right.
That when it doesn't matter what goes around you, you're calm.
You're always
level-headed,
right? Cool, calm, and collective.
Ice cream.
You understand, like you built up that discernment. You understand when to use your, that like not like force, but that right emotion at a certain time that you need to, because it takes a lot. Maybe I don't know about y'all, but it takes a lot for me to become angry or just like one that I need to stand firm or voice something very, very strong.
Yeah.
You know, but I have a lot of discernment, you know what I mean? I kind of like, I go out to my accountability partners. I seek advice first, or am I tripping or am I feeling the right way? Should I like approach this person? And then I say something. If I'm like, all right, if I'm coming to the right decision, then I'll say something.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
like.
Another thing also that just came to mind is to be meek and have strength under control is to understand and not be so selfish.
Yeah.
Don't walk around thinking that everything's about you.
Exactly. Yeah,
You know, the guy that cut you off in the road, all of a sudden the reason road rage happens is because they think whatever that guy did on the road it was directed personally at him.
Yeah.
But who knows what that dude's going through, right? So you go through life and through, you know, all day or whatever throughout your week, taking everything personally when it's not about you. You know,
Right.
I've been on a kick and I spoke to Kid about it earlier on Solomon. Kid, he was the best of the best. He's the GOAT, right? And I
all this wisdom.
I want to have a heart after God like David, but he was humble. I want to be humble like Solomon. Like he asked for wisdom, but not to be wise. He asked for wisdom to be able to serve his people, God's people.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm but a child. You made me king. I want wisdom because I want to please you and be a better servant to your people. I want to be a better servant. To me, that embodies not being selfish. You walk through life knowing that you're a servant, and that's one of our pastor. You remember the 4 P's?
Yep.
Protector, provider. That every man should be a protector, provider, a priest, and a prophet. We already spoke about protection, provider. We got to be servants. So, and back to how I got on this is like people walk around thinking that it's all about them.
Yeah.
She was rude to me. It was me personally, but you don't know what they're going through. You just happen to be that person in front of her that she lashed out to, but it's not about you. Your job is to be a servant.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Imagine if you walked around the earth thinking that you're God's servant and I'm here to serve you.
And it goes back to what's the 2 most important commandments? You know, love God with all your heart and soul, and love your neighbor just as much as you love yourself. Yeah. Like, come on, love God with all your heart, and then love that your brother right next to you just as much as you love yourself. Yeah. You know?
And what do you do to
and
people
that grows
that you love?
your meekness.
You enjoy serving them.
Yeah, you enjoy serving them.
I want to touch on Solomon again, because you said something really interesting. You gave the perspective of him not being selfish by asking for wisdom, but really he had an aspect of meekness that I think is getting overlooked, and that is his ability. He's been given the ability to create and do and take as many wives as he wants and create kingdoms and all sorts of stuff, right?
Boy got greedy.
He got a lot of power, earthly power, right? Mm-hmm. But out of everything, he asked for godly wisdom on how to handle the stuff that he already knows didn't belong to him anyways.
Yeah, what got me, though, was why he asked for wisdom. He didn't ask for wisdom for selfish reasons. He asked for wisdom to be a better servant.
Yeah.
I want to be a blessing to people.
Yeah.
I want to be able to, he said, his word, and it's 1 Kings 3, where I think 5 and forward, where the Bible talks about this. He said, "You put me in this position. You honored my father, King David, and you honored him because he loved you. Now you're honoring me by putting me in this position of being a king. And I'm only but a child. I have no clue what I'm doing. And now I'm supposed to lead your people that are so vast that you can't even count them. And I have nothing to do. So what do I want? I want wisdom so I can better serve your people, God." And God was so touched by this. He's like, "Man, you asked for that, so I'm going to give you everything else." That, to me, like, we always heard, like, he asked for wisdom. Well, he wanted wisdom. But why he asked for wisdom affected me deep. Because it's all about serving. It's all about serving.
I have a question for you guys.
And serving all them wives.
Yeah. How do you balance being assertive and being gentle? I've got an answer, but you guys can go first.
I kind of just said, I kind of touched on that a
being
little bit.
assertive and gentle.
How do you balance being assertive and being gentle?
Well, like assertive, like just standing back, like being aware of your surroundings.
Assertive meaning like you have the power to take every single decision into your own hands and forcefully impose your will on anything.
Well, see, that's where it comes from,
How do
your
you balance it being
discernment.
gentle?
You balance it, like you have to understand the situation. Like it's going to hurt, let's just say like business in the workplace. Like how do you balance, like, okay, is it going to hurt the team? Is it more important for me to, not listen to anybody's opinions or, ideas and just let me make a decision and overpower this whole project? Or do I let people just, feel like they're, giving like good advice or getting ideas or feeling heard, so that helps build the culture and that camaraderie and all that.
Yeah.
So I think it's a give and take,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And then, yeah.
I'm going to break the fourth wall. So what SP said is pretty profound because it actually applies to me and his relationship. Just being honest. So we've actually grown. I feel like we've all grown as hosts and stuff, grown as people. Like God has given us, different perspectives and the ability to love each other in a different kind of way. So we're all like three guys that have a lot of strength, strong opinions. We got the same beliefs, but different perspectives. And sometimes it's really hard to agree on everything. So really, I mean, I can't run everything. Papa Bear can't run everything. SP can't run everything. God's capable of speaking to all of us, including Jay, our producer. So what SP said is really profound because I would say the way this applies to myself is I have the ability to be very assertive and really kind of like impose my will, what I think is the right thing, because I've got this ideal of how I want things to run, and I can be a perfectionist sometimes. Yeah. But the other side of me that's called to be gentle around people that I love forces me to take into consideration what other people feel, how they'll feel.
Right.
How do we interact with one another? How do we work with each other? So for those of y'all listening, y'all have to make the same type of decisions that we have.
Yeah.
Everybody that you're in a relationship with, you got to exercise a level of gentleness, even though you may have the ability to make whatever kind of decisions you want. If you're a boss woman, boss man, fine, you can make the decisions. You're built for that. However, you've got to exercise a level of gentleness because meekness is a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Strength under control.
For me, I always, you got to pick your battles, right? What's this decision?
About my wife.
Yeah, what's this decision about?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And is it even going to matter?
Yeah.
If it's a battle that I don't want to fight, I usually give in. But if it's something that I know it's going to affect us negatively, then I need to make a call.
Yeah.
They say, people will always remember how you make them feel, not how they walk away. The number one thing that people walk away from is how did you make them feel?
Yeah.
So, and some people have the ability to just sit you down and tell you nothing but negative things, but make you feel loved. And other people have the ability to sit you down and tell you nothing but loving things, and you feel like crap after they're done, right? Because it's how you present it, right?
Yeah.
And when I have to be assertive, I just usually 9 times out of 10 it's for the benefit of something.
Yeah.
I'm not just going to be assertive because I'm being selfish, or maybe I am. I don't know. I'm not perfect. But I usually try to, it's how I make people feel.
Yeah.
Usually to let them know that I care about them. And
gentle words, man.
And at the end of the day. And then there's also, sometimes God gives you a vision of something that you think, the direction you have to take, the direction you have to go, and non-negotiables. And at the end of the day, that's just a non-negotiable for me. I'm sorry. Yeah. I love you.
Yeah.
I hear where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, I always say, if I'm going to have all the responsibility, then I need to have the power.
Interesting.
I'm not going to have the power, the responsibility, and then you don't give me the power to make the decision.
Whenever I have to impose my will to discipline my children, for instance, and they just need a spanking, right? Just a spanking. I'm not talking about beating y'all, so don't think I'm over here just like whipping my kids, you know. Usually we have to explain to our kids, you don't do this, and this is why.
Yeah.
You be kind to people. You don't hit them because it's just not the right thing to do. So whenever one of my kids hits somebody, I tell them, remember what I told you? And they're like, uh-huh. And they go back and do it again. I'm like, okay, now you're just asking for me to assert my will and discipline.
Yeah.
Now I have to spank you. And I have to explain to them, I don't enjoy spanking you. Yeah. I don't like having to constantly correct you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to make you better, right? So that's like the interesting aspect about being assertive and being gentle at the same time. I mean, for instance, our relationship to God, right? Because we're in sin, he gently corrects us. But what if every time we did something wrong, he just strikes us with the plague?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You know, the reason it took me a while to think and answer this is because, you know, I realized that I rarely have to be quote unquote assertive in anything that I do. And I think the reason is you establish a precedence and a record with whoever you're dealing with, professionally, even your marriage or whatnot. And usually when you have a relationship with somebody, they know what you're about, who you are, what type of person you are. And when you make a decision that and you have a proven record of being a high character, good integrity, they're not even going to fight you. They're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, you've already proven to me that the decisions you make are for my best interest.
Yeah.
So we're having a disagreement, but you're saying this is the way it is, no problem. So I don't like to sound like I'm all this and that, but I'm not perfect, but I rarely have issues like that because usually I always tell people, like, I'm not going to, with the team, like, I'm not going to have you do something that I haven't already done or I'm not willing to do myself.
Right.
But I think that's just your character in general. That's just you being authentic to you, like essentially true to yourself. You know, I think people that are more assertive, like, have a little bit of a, you know, pride that they're dealing with. It comes with like ego and all that. Maybe they just try to be a little bit too forceful or too in control at times and not looking at the greater good, or, you know, kind of like what you're explaining. Because I kind of agree with you. I think I don't really have trouble like trying to be too assertive, or because I'm just authentic. Like, I don't. Yeah. I'm just.
It's good that
control.
You say authentic.
Yeah.
You got to be honest.
Yeah.
Like,
because I don't have no ego. Like, I'm not like trying to, you know, go into a group or try to make my voice be louder than other people so I can be heard. Like, I don't need to do all that. Like, I want what's best for the team or the environment, and I know, like, you know, like, if I have to say something, I will say something. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I won't do it in an aggressive way.
One of the things, like, in business, like, I realized, and I don't remember where I picked it up from. When you have bad news to deliver to a customer, a lot of times we beat around the bush. I'm like, well, let me explain something to you. This is what happened. Before you even tell them the negative thing, you go through all this long explanation about what, and then by the time you tell them, it's not well received. And statistically, I read somewhere that it's better for you to just be honest with the person and tell them up front.
Right.
Unfortunately, I have some bad news for you.
Yeah.
And right then and there, they're going to know. And the bad news is X, Y, and Z. Once you get that shock out of there, then you can go into the explanation. It's better received.
Yeah.
But that's because you're being honest.
Yeah. Right.
And whether we realize it or not, a lot of times we're not, like you said, authentic. And we try to, you know, put lipstick on a pig and this isn't really as bad as you think. But no, it's negative news.
Yeah.
I think that's key. Like, you have to be honest and true to yourself and say, hey, this guy's being authentic. He's being honest, and he's got a proven track record of what he does and what he is. Because even your children, once they know like what you're saying is true. Like if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. Now, the next time they're going to think twice about it.
They especially don't like stuff being taken away. But
what's the next one? I think.
Okay, this one's going to be good. So we'll cap off this this little segment by asking a question, but we're going to preface it with some information first. So the question is, how is meekness actually a form of restraint and discipline? Before we answer that, I want to preface by saying, before we are able to be disciplined, we first have to be a disciple. Okay? For those of you watching, you ask, what is a disciple? I got the answer. A disciple is not just a learner, but also a follower who applies what they have learned. Ooh. So, in other words, you have to be led, right? So, the question, how is meekness actually a form of restraint and discipline? Keep in mind, you have to be led first. You have to be a disciple.
Led by the Holy Spirit.
Jesus. Yeah. We're talking about building the fruits that we spoke about in the last podcast. You have to know that you have to first be able to be led.
Read the question one more time.
So the question is, how is meekness actually a form of restraint and discipline?
Okay. Well, it's back to the original comment that I made earlier.
Self-control.
Meekness is it's an actual, because you're capable of not being meek. You're capable. You have the strength to not be meek. So a person of power has the ability. Let's say the corporate world, director of a company. You do something negative, that person has the power to get rid of you. But instead of you exercising that power in a negative way, he decides to edify you and disciple you. Or in the church, somebody did something negative and he's struggling with something. Right. Instead of judging him, you speak life into him, you help him through his issues, and you disciple him. And that's restraining your power of doing the negative, but you choose to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I got my thought across right.
It's good. So,
did you get that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, yeah. Say the question again.
So the question is.
Well, I mean, I get it. I just want to.
I'm the same way.
It's such a generic question. It can be answered many ways, but how is meekness, strength under control, actually a form of restraint and discipline?
I guess it's it's a form of restraint, kind of like, I don't know, I'm gonna piggyback off of you a little bit. It's just you have that built up self-control of, like, because you're following Jesus, you're subconsciously automatically thinking like what Jesus would do. You know what I mean? You're not gonna be forceful or like judging or shaming you. Like, first we're gonna lead with love. Be like, okay, you know what? Hold them accountable, but just, continue to build them up, pour into them, so they don't make the same mistake twice.
And dude, you killed it. So he actually answered the question in the way that you didn't even realize, because whenever we talked in the last podcast about one of the fruits being self-control, you get that self-control by first being a disciple, which means you're led,
right?
Which means you're cultivating those fruits. So self-control is an aspect of exercising that meekness, right? Mm-hmm. So because you said we know who we belong to, we know who we're following, who we're serving, we're able to be led to then, like, acknowledge that we've got strength, but it needs to be directed.
Yeah.
And we're
in a loving way.
In the right way. Like, we're not capable sometimes of controlling our emotions. Like, I actually need help with self-control. I actually need help with loving. I need help with forbearance. I need help with every single fruit that you can build. I need it, like, all the time.
Yeah.
So,
but because when we're born, we immediately put on earth with tendencies to do the opposite of what God wants us to do.
Right. Yeah,
our number one desire and drive is to do what the flesh wants. So right off the bat, we have to be disciplined enough to turn our back from the world and the sin and seek God.
Yeah, because we're disciples, you will see our fruit. Mm-hmm. Because we're disciples, because We are led. We're devoted followers who are open to learning biblical principles of internal, characteristics of biblical masculinity. We're capable of growing. That means you're going to see our fruit by the way we live.
Yeah. I flourished in the church more with people and men that were around me that I knew were meek. And by what I mean by that is like they weren't with men that weren't afraid to say, I'm a sinner. I struggle with these things.
Yeah.
Versus men that walked around pretending like they walked on water and like our pastor says had communion for breakfast this morning. And they never sin. If you went up to him and say, man, I struggle with lust, like, how dare you? Like he never did that, right?
Right.
So to me, that wouldn't be meekness because he's acting like he never even had the power to do the negative, right?
Yeah, right.
But a man that sits there and says, I have the power and I have the desire and the ability to do the negative things and not restrain from that, that's a true leader, a true masculine, biblical man. And I love that. When I ran into that and people that were actually just honest and vulnerable and say, hey, man, this is what I'm capable of, but this is the way I choose to live my life.
Yeah.
I would respect that. Like, hey, you know, hey, I can't do that, because I have these guardrails that protects me from doing X, Y, and Z. Man, I love that.
Yeah.
Instead of walking around like, I don't struggle with that. I have no issues whatsoever. I'm perfect.
Yeah. Well, I'd say we covered this pretty well.
We killed it.
This is our first.
We were all over that. I feel like I was all over the place.
This is our first freestyle.
always
So
did good.
we got more to bring y'all. So stay tuned. We'll be doing this again. We got 6 or so different topics to cover.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Stay tuned. And until next time, be blessed.
Love y'all.
Bye.
Like, click, and subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon to be notified of when we release new content. Peace.